Hello, Lukas. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. Thank you. My name is Lukas Linnig. I live in Frankfurt. I originally studied economics and also completed my CFA a couple of years ago. And when I started my career, I started in Munich in an incubator. I was working with several companies there, supporting them to build their businesses and to grow. And thereafter, I went to Frankfurt to a financial advisory company in which I was supporting clients either on M&A transactions, on corporate finance matters, or also on accounting related topics. One of my projects there was a project I did together with Brain. That was during the time when Brain was going for its IPO and support was needed. And this is how I came to Brain initially as a consultant. In 2017, then I started as head of finance in Brain. And since October last year, I'm the responsible CFO of Brain Biotech AG.
You've now been the CFO of Brain for roughly 1 year. What changes have you already initiated?
Thank you very much. Good question. And what we started with is essentially to look at what does Brain have to do in order to become more successful. And the overlying theme is that we need to become a more professional and a more commercially driven organization. And this is where we have taken a couple of steps, which include a more professional controlling and oversight organization when it comes to our subsidiaries and their performance. This also includes a much more rigorous review and also communication about our business development pipeline and our incubator business, which we are now communicating very transparently to the capital markets. And on top of that, two more very important projects in that area have been mergers and acquisitions, where we are building a much wider pipeline of companies we are speaking with in order to increase our industrial footprint, mainly in the enzyme space. One of the projects that my dear colleague Arian Mulker has been working on a lot is a project where we try to enhance our corporate culture. For that, we have established a couple of measures, whereas the spearhead is a project which we call the Brainway, which is a group-wide training program where all our employees get through a teaching course where we try to help our employees to become more effective, more professional, and more commercially driven. And last but not least, one very important priority of myself has been my so-called special project around genome editing, which I lead within the organization. And I'm pretty sure we will speak about that project a little bit later as well.
Can you explain in layman terms what Brain really does?
Thank you very much. Very good question. And we get asked that question a lot. Brain is active in the field of white biotech. What does that mean? We use biology to replace several processes which are on the market already to either make them more sustainable, more healthy, or to create a better well-being. To give you a few examples, we develop enzymes. Enzymes can be used in industrial processes. They can be used to replace chemicals in processes which have unwanted side effects. We're also developing our own natural products or products from natural compounds, which could be, for example, our salt taste enhancement program, where we have developed a compound which enables consumer goods companies to use less salt in their products and to add some of our salt taste enhancer, which makes the less amount of the salt taste the same as salty as the original product. Other examples are our natural sweetener or a product which is used to replace sorbate in food applications. When we speak about additional categories we are working on, this was all in the field of white biotech. We also have some developments in the pharma field. The two main candidates to mention here are our product in which we developed together with SolarScure, which is Orase, an enzyme for wound debridement. And additionally, another important project, which we are doing also with a partner, which is called Pharvaris, is our product candidate PHA121, which is used to fight hereditary angioedema, a rare disease where we are currently in the registration process for the clinical trials in phase 2. And then last but not least, the fourth category to mention here is where Brain is a technology provider, where Brain uses its own capabilities and its own technologies and licenses them out. And one prominent example for that is, of course, our BEC technology or our genome editing platform, which we'll speak about later.
What sets Brain apart from other biotech companies?
Thank you very much. Good question. In general, one big asset we have is a very broad and deep technology, which we have developed over the last 27 years in industrial biotech. We also have a so-called bioarchive, which is essentially a collection of biological material from all over the world, which we call the biodiversity, which we can mine and search for new compounds and new host organisms to work with. We also have a very strong network of partners we are working with, which we have in areas like chemicals, food industries, but also in mining and several different other areas, which are a strong base for us in terms of customers. And last but not least, I think it's fair to say that Brain is also, for many players in the market, especially the European market, the preferred solution provider when it comes to replacing their processes with biology.
What influence can biotechnology have on society?
Yeah, from my personal point of view, biotechnology can have a huge impact. No, will have a huge impact on society. We talk about a lot of things these days. One of the most pressing topics we are facing is climate change and a healthier lifestyle. And biotechnology can address a lot of these things. And from my point of view, genome editing or genome engineering will be one of the key technologies of this century to enable this process to become more sustainable and a more healthy world and society. And having said that, biology can help with a lot of things in these areas. When you speak about CO2 reduction, you can use biotechnology to use CO2 as a feedstock, so as a raw material to produce several products with biology, with biological processes. And this is, of course, great news because everyone wants to get rid of CO2. And if you can combine that with, let's say, doing a process where you do battery mining and you don't need chemicals which are really toxic, but you can use CO2 as a feedstock, combine that with a little bit of energy and the right biological material, and then help recycle these batteries without needing to have so many toxic chemicals. And that's just one of the examples. There's many, many more, but I don't think we can go into all the details there right now.
What are the biggest upcoming value drivers for Brain shareholders?
That's a good question. But I actually think the next year is going to be a really, really important year for Brain. We have a couple of major things and major triggers which can happen next year. And just to mention a few, currently we are in our development. I think I mentioned that earlier. In our wound care development, SolarSpure, we are in clinical phase 2A of the clinical trials. We hope to proceed to clinical phase 2B next year, which would, for us, be a significant value increase. Additionally, we have another pharma project, which is right before its next step, which is, I also mentioned that, the project PHA121, which we have partnered together with Bavaris. And in that project, next year, a step from clinical phase 2 to clinical phase 3 is expected. And if that happens, our internal risk-adjusted net present value for that project, for the benefit that Brain will get, jumps from 15 million to over 100 million, which is quite meaningful on the science of brain. And then, of course, we also expect to be able to communicate significant deal flow and news next year around our genome editing platform. And we have recently, a couple of days ago, we have been able to announce that we are not only having one genome editing tool now, but that we were able to edit a second one with first activity in microbial organisms, which is great news for us because we intend to build more than a single technology company, but a company that can offer several technologies for several needs in different markets. And so I'm excited for next year, and I'm pretty sure that our investors can be as well.
Speaking of genome engineering, why is BEC, the brain engineered Cas, taking such a prominent role?
Yeah, I mean, I've touched on that a couple of times already, and it is my personal belief that this project can be really transformative for Brain. We at Brain are convinced, and I think it's fair to say that most people in the investment community and also in the scientific community are of the same belief. We are convinced that biotechnology is going to be the next gold rush, in the current century. The question is then, who makes money in a gold rush? And there's many companies worldwide that work on biotechnologies, in the field of biotechnology and on biotechnological solutions. The point is, not everyone that uses biotechnology to develop a certain product will also make money. And from our point of view, we want to do two things. First, we want to work on the project where we believe we have a high chance of getting to success. This is kind of us digging ourselves for gold. On the other hand, we also believe that there's a big market to help others dig for gold. Because who makes the most money in a gold rush? Okay, there's a few that find the big nuggets and that find a lot of gold, but the ones that have a really, really good chance of making money is the ones that sell shovels. And when we talk about genome editing, we essentially talk about selling shovels. Because if you want to understand how biotechnology works, you usually always start with editing DNA. This is at the core of what biotechnology does. And therefore, we are very, very happy that we could develop such a tool over the last years, that we were able earlier this year to announce our first brain engineered Cas nuclease, and to have now also followed up with our next nuclease, which we call the BMC, the brain metagenomic Cas. Because we believe that if we sell the right shovels to the right players, there is a lot of money for us to be made. And while it's doing that, we can enable other companies to do something good for society and the environment.
Are you happy with your current financial situation? Will it be enough to really think bold on BEC?
If we look at our current financial situation, I'm very happy and thankful to our investors that we were able to do a capital increase this year to finance some of these activities. And I would say for the time being, we are pretty well financed when it comes to both our brain investments and also the initial investments we want to do into our genome editing platform. However, and as said, this can be transformative for Brain. If we keep on being successful as we are right now with these developments, we will need more funding. We will need more funding to develop this platform into a much stronger asset, which we can commercialize with more power. And there's different ways to do that. We could, of course, just go to our investors and say, hey, we need to do a capital increase. But I think there's other ways to do that, to achieve that too. And one of these other ways is to raise money on the level of the technology itself. So currently, we are preparing the spin out of this genome editing platform technology. And we expect that once we have founded the company, we will also be able to do fundraising on the company level itself to not only get money in, but also more network, more expertise, etc., which is really, really helpful and important in that field to commercialize.
Are you focusing on growth only, or is profitability also a target?
No, profitability is key for us. We have our core business, and when I talk about the core business, I'm essentially referring to our segments, bioscience and bioindustrial. So that means without our ventures and investments in CRISPR. And if I talk about that core business, we need to become more profitable. We need to become profitable in the first place, and then we need to become more profitable. And we have already taken several measures to increase that profitability. And we hope to be able to harvest some of the fruits of our work there in the near future. Genome editing, as I said, is a separate area where we need to invest significantly. But as mentioned earlier, this can also be financed on different levels below Brain.
What are your midterm financial targets?
Yes, sure. Our guidance is based on our core business. Without the CRISPR business model, it does not include the investments nor the revenues to be generated from the commercialization of the technology. If we look at our guidance as it stands, we want to double our revenues in the midterm based on the 18-19 figures. And we want to achieve an EBITDA margin of 15% plus minus 5% points, depending on our incubator business and how we commercialize the different parts of the business model, because of course you have a huge swing in EBITDA margin if you have a license-only model or if you sell products yourself as well.
How do you attract and retain key employees?
That's actually really, really important and a big thing for us, because, I mean, we are knowledge-driven. And the people in our company are our most important assets. I mean, I couldn't be in the lab and do all the stuff that our folks are doing. That wouldn't work. At least it wouldn't turn out well. But if we look at how we retain people, I think there's two important things to mention. On the one hand, which is maybe a little bit more the soft side, many people really like to work for Brain because it gives them a purpose. It gives them a purpose in the sense that Brain is working on stuff which is really important for the society and the environment, and many people want to have a meaning with what they do. On the other hand, and that is equally important, we of course also need to make sure that our employees are incentivized financially. And this is why we have introduced a couple of years ago already an ESOP scheme where our key employees participate in increases and the development of our share price over time.
What role does ESG play for Brain?
Yeah, I've mentioned that a couple of times, or touched on it at least during our discussion. And ESG is at the heart of what Brain does. And if you're familiar with the UN Sustainability Development Goals, there's at least 5 that Brain addresses. If you talk about zero hunger, you could mention projects like our Pyrrolic Active development, where, and I've mentioned that, where we are replacing sorbate as a preservative to make food last longer with our product called Pyrrolic Active. If you talk about category 3, it is, I believe, good health and well-being, we talk about developments that we're working on for sugar reduction, for salt reduction, for wound treatment or wound debridement. And there's many more in that area which we are actively working on. Another category would be clean water and sanitation, where we are working on a project together with one of our partners where we use microbial process to replace cyanide in mining processes. And that is, of course, a very toxic chemical, which is also very bad for water and sanitation. And our biological process would not have these issues. Also, there's a couple of other things. I won't go into every detail, but our CO2 capture program is a very important driver, of course, for UN Sustainability Development Goal number 9. Fermentation of side streams would fall in the same category. And if you talk about circular economies. One of our projects, we call it urban mining, falls into there very nicely, where we work in different areas. One example being battery recycling, where you use biological processes in order to create a circular economy in order to minimize waste within the process.
Last question. What excites you the most about Brain, and what keeps you busy at night?
I mean, I came to Brain a couple of years ago now already, and I'm really fascinated by the vast amount of opportunities that we have. And managing all these opportunities, while it's also mitigating the risks, making sure we're properly financed, is a really big challenge. But I love big challenges, and this is why I really enjoy working for Brain.
Hi there, since you watched this company video until the end, I'm guessing you liked the video. And that's probably because we work very hard to create the most engaging and added value content for you. If you're a company and want to find out how we, at Seat 11A, can make a company video with and about you, please email us at content@seat11a.com.